Tyler is an Emmy Award-watching senior studying communications and history. He is assistant director of Penn's improv troupe, Without a Net, and he's currently working on a few video projects, including a documentary on professional matchmakers in Philadelphia. Wow. He does not have cable, so feel free to share with him. Please welcome Tyler.
Got some visuals for all of you. All right. I'd just like to start by asking, is anyone familiar with this show, The Tick? 2, 3? This is more than I thought. I'm impressed. So, for those of you who are not familiar, The Tick is a parody superhero. It started as a comic book series centered around the titular character, the blue guy, who is a dim-witted and absurd hero with incredible strength and near invulnerability, who fights crime with the help of his sidekick, the Mothman Arthur, the guy on the right. And The Tick was turned into a live-action series in 2001. The series follows the Tick and Arthur and their fellow superheroes Captain Liberty and Batman through their attempts at dealing with everyday banal life and occasionally fighting a villain. In the first episode, Arthur quits his job as an accountant and decides to be a superhero. He meets the Tick, who decides to join Arthur in his quest to stop an old Soviet robot from the 1970s that is programmed to kill a now long-retired Jimmy Carter. I'm going to show you a little clip from that first episode where the Tick and the Arthur have one of their first interactions. Yeah. See, is that? It's the front AV.
Is this it?
Oh, there we go. All right.
This is incredible. It looks just like an apartment.
What?
All right. Show me your trigger.
My what?
Your secret headquarters trigger, the switch that pops up all your secret crime-busting equipment. Is this it? Huh? Say, what does your sofa turn into?
It turns into a bed.
Well, that's a start. What else you got?
Nothing. I've got nothing. This is just an apartment. What are you doing here?
I followed you home. I got something I want to show you.
Look, this whole thing was a mistake. Apparently superheroes are just a bunch of egotistical, self-centered, sexually frustrated kindergartners. No offense intended.
None comprehended.
It's just, I thought they were supposed to risk it all for the common good, you know, help the downtrodden.
All right. So I guess the question remains, what does this absurdist superhero parody have to do with home? In its content, very little. Arthur has an apartment, the Tick decides to move in, and the home doesn't really hold much narrative significance. But it also wasn't a show I watched as a child. I'm the one in the middle. We watched a lot of TV, me and my brothers, but my parents actually refused to let me watch this show when I was a kid because of some of the adult themes and content. But in a different way, The Tick was a very important part of my childhood. I felt more connected to that show than any that has come before or since. And it is because the man in the white suit is David Burke, my father, who's sitting right over there. He likes to embarrass me, so this is my chance to embarrass him back. It's easy to look up to... This is all just a pathos speech. It's easy to look up to a dad who is kind and loving and supportive. It's even easier to look up to a dad who is a superhero. My dad... Oh, you guys. You're making it harder for me. My dad, the superhero. Unfortunately, the show only lasted for one season, but for at least 3, if not 18 years after the show ended, I still felt like the coolest kid around, having a dad who was a super. Oh, jeez. It's not even sad. It was the biggest bragging rights a 6-year-old could have. I wouldn't mention that his superhero character was a Mothman, or that he didn't even really have superpowers, or that his show was a parody. All that mattered was my dad was Arthur, the crime-fighting hero. There was even an action figure made of my dad, which frankly is a little creepy. But he was also a super dad. Acting is an incredibly demanding job, and the working days often run late and long. Other roles would take him out of the state or the country for days or weeks at a time, but he always made time to hang out with me and my brothers to coach us in t-ball and the ways of the world. My dad also taught me a lot about how to have pride in a home. He spent a lot of time learning woodworking and carpentry and built a lot of bookcases, shelves, desks, and beds for our home. He even built an outside guest room with a few friends, which, unlike Arthur's apartment, actually has a secret closet space hidden behind a bookshelf, which he made. He showed me that the more effort and care you put into your space, the more it will matter to you. Taught me that there's sometimes a lot of downtime between jobs in the entertainment industry, which isn't a bad thing because the home can be a productive space as well. It was really fun growing up and feeling a part of like the behind-the-scenes TV world. I used to love visiting the sets. They're like the coolest place you could ever be in, except there were a million adults with headsets and a lot of determination in their eyes. And then there were all the crazy costumes. You could watch all the superheroes just talk on the phone behind the scenes or go over lines dressed in these ridiculous outfits. And the set buildings themselves were these delicately put together, one-sided buildings with a bajillion lights all around. And despite the high-stress environment of a set, everyone was so nice to the cute little kids that visit. On one visit, the director even let me control the tip's antenna with a remote control. Although, to be honest, my favorite part of the sets were always the craft services. Every snack imaginable lined up like the Last Supper on a foldable table where there's no such thing as a bad decision. But in a weird way, growing up, going to television sets also ruined some of the magic of TV. I understood early on that there was a difference between actor and character, between sets and real life. I knew that it was the cords attached to my dad's suit that let him fly, not any sort of superpower. Arthur's apartment wasn't his real home. My dad lived with me. TV was always entertaining, but it was always imaginary, false, unreal. Yet, in spite of this, or maybe because of this, I've always wanted to be a director. I wanted to return to those giant sets, to stand behind a camera and speak commands into a walkie-talkie. The subsequent visits to the sets taught me about all the different positions that existed on a film, and I always really loved talking to the stunt coordinators who would just tell me about all the stuff they blew up. And the TV sets were a little home away from home, where I always wanted to go instead of the boring playgrounds, snore, or our little backyard. And my parents have always been incredibly supportive. They made it in one of the most competitive industries, and now that determination has been passed down. I'm a senior, I'm graduating in 7 months. And I hope soon after, I'll be back on set, working in the creative space of an imaginary world. Thank you.